why people want to do something about observatories. And in this case, it's not the government, it's not the industry as such. However, extractive industries in Latin America, they know a lot about the territory. For their own interest, they don't share the information, of course. Perhaps a little bit with the government to influence on policies. But people know a lot about their area, their territory, and they have a lot of other reasons to put up some kind of observatory. Does it work? How goes the thing to change it?
Use the arrow.
The arrow. This one.
This one.
Okay. Yeah. I'm not so very good with a good view, and my pixels went during the last 30 years lower. So with the presentation, I've got my own tablet, and I use it here, so I don't need to read and to. Well, okay. Landscape in Latin America. It's strange. It's not it's not an issue. Perhaps for tourism. Okay, that was a thing we heard before. I want to take you from the Andean to the Andean zone, but let's see that the Andean zone, afterwards we have a small map, but you can imagine a little bit, from north to south in the whole Latin America, and also from the north part, the Rocky Mountains, there was one strain of mountains connected to the coastal area and connected in Latin America to the Amazon. So it's an interrelated also territory. And in history, it always was interrelated. The main culture groups came from coastal movements or even from Amazon movements coming up. And they change territory, of course. And what I wanted to highlight a little bit is, and the case I want to share with you is not every territory. It's also related to what we call terraced landscape. Mountain area, you can't cultivate the slope if you don't make infrastructure for it. So all kinds and all different kinds of terraces. They call it in the Andean area andenes. Well, doesn't matter that way. It's highly diverse landscape, highly. Coastal, Andean zone, Amazon, of course. Different territories, and inside each territory, a huge quantity of different landscapes. If you go from the Pacific, traveling upwards on the highlands, going down to Amazon, you could pass more or less 23 different international recognized ecosystems, and perhaps inside even more. Well, the thing is that it is absolutely an historical process of transformations. If we talk in Peru about history of the territory and landscape management, land use, then they say, oh yeah, those Incas. They were the last one before the conquest in the culture of territorial governance. But before, there were a lot of other forms and cultures to be active in the territory, constructing also a landscape and their own way of living, even in the desert. The main cultures of importance in Peru are from the desert, the small coastal area on the Pacific side. Then the Andean, and nowadays they recognize that the Amazon people also had a lot of influence and traveling even by how to live in an Amazon landscape, a river landscape. It's not a mountain watershed. It's quite different. Well, history is very important, but also those processes of different views on economic development. Let's have something on the conquest period. It's a long period. The idea of how to manage landscape was to reorganize and concentrate those Indians, because very dispersed, it's not controlled so sufficiently. So domination needs concentration. In this case, afterwards, in the Republic period, there was a lot of struggle about between different economic groups who stayed or who came in, also immigrations. So all those processes influenced highly on the territorial occupation, exploitation. Mining is not a new thing nowadays, however, it's quite hard now to analyze it, and I will do it with you. Then another thing important is that differences in political decision and governmental periods in all Latin America, no, not in every country, but somehow in huge processes of land reform, because we came from a, let's say, a big landowners hacienda culture to a difference to change the land use and the control about it for a more market orientation. And then the land reform had two objectives. The one is specific and one a little bit silent. The specific one was help the local people to land, because there was a quite strong land use differentiation that is still going on. In Peru, it had a change, but by example in Ecuador, you can see still the main concentration on big land owners, use and companies. That process is now going again in Peru on. And in Bolivia, by example, there is a struggle about this model, because a lot of local people, the communities, they say now with this kind of government, we are important, we are recognized, so we put out also our objectives in the agenda. Hmm? Of course. So what is going on after a land reform is a sort of a counter-land reform, and that means in a neoliberal situation, which is all around in Latin America, open up the land for any kind of investment. If there is a problem of poverty, environment, or conflicts, you pay it off. So big company comes in an absolute liberal and free situation to occupy land. That means that those people who live there, they are a sort of a, how you say, a frame and a limitation for this opening of land and capital development, which is really high and very strong. So they had to push out. Or you buy them out or you push them out. You can imagine in the coastal area, agribusiness accumulating in 4 or 5 years, financial groups, they're not agriculture, financial groups can accumulate more than 120,000 hectares. It's possible, and it is done. And that means also the control not of territory, but of water, living, local economy, and decision making. So, in the highlands, the mining companies occupy new concessions and land. In some provinces, regions, it can go up to more than 80% of the land control. In the southern part, a little bit less, etc. Amazon is concessed to 14 international oil companies for more than 70%. So we think also of Amazon, oh, beautiful, it's an oil company area. It is also a palm oil biofuel area, and it's also a gold exploitation area. Okay, those people who, let's say, on the terraced landscapes, hillside, decided that the governance, the government, they don't see them. So they say, if you don't see me, I have got to defend myself. And one of the ways and strategies was from the last 2 years, after a terraced landscape congress in Cusco, was the coming up of landscape, Andean landscape, terraced landscape specialists, farmers, more women even than men, to get together, their interest, and to be seen. And to be seen meant also to be heard. So they started the last 2 years to discuss what is our voice to be heard, and how will we do that? And then they came up with the idea and said, we know a lot about our territory, our landscape, in Arequipa, Colca, or in Cusco, and on the Huaylas, etc., or in Puno even. But our colleagues of Ayacucho, they don't know quite well how are our areas, and we feel that sharing our knowledge and information, problems, proposals, new ideas is quite important. So the observatory, Farmers Observatory, has multiple goals: defense, knowledge, sharing, organization, get their voice be heard, and finding out ways to oblige government to discuss with them, to have a dialogue. The difficulty is that a lot of these new land occupations, I didn't mention so much hydropower industry, and also the enormous growing urbanization, the movement from rural area to urban, leaves a lot of area also not as used but abandoned. The percentage of terraced landscape abandoning is between 30 and somehow in other places 70%. So they ask with their observatory attention, and they demonstrate also why. Because they control erosion, because they produce food. 60% of the national food production, or food consuming in the trade, comes from the small-scale farmers, also from the terraced landscape. 70% of the employment is rural still. But the last 20 neoliberal governments is investment, open territory, money comes in, we got more money, and we gain a lot. There's also a huge process, not only in Brazil, but now going on also in Peru, of corruption. And it's the same enterprise, Odebrecht. And that means not small one. The president of 2 governments before, Mr. Toledo, he is now in the process for $24 million corruption. And the actual president, Mr. Kuczynski, was his economy financial ministry. So the thing is moving quite hard. And people lost confidence in anything what is government. And that's a very, not difficult, it's a very dangerous situation. So observatories goes much more beyond the landscape, gain also a political function when movements or social organization were distracted more or less by new land occupation. Well, I want to finish with the enormous importance of landscape knowledge, not only from the beauty, but how to manage. You can imagine that the art of water management on hillside, it's enormous, and those knowledge is not known, even not in universities. I came from Wageningen, I had to learn completely again what is water and soil management. The main principles, okay, that's good, but how is the social implementation of it and how to manage really territory. Two new things comes up and that gives us for the observatory hope. One is new policy on watershed management, and they call it integrated water management. Sounds beautiful. Who integrates whom? And who is the actor that want to be integrated also? But it's starting. So it opens people and also observatories to say, we are here, we're part of the watershed. And even though we live in the upper side, so we, let's say, produce water for you downstreams. And downstreams, it's a big economy activity. I take the example of the watershed of Arequipa. Waterdown is hydropower. It's 1 million people in the city for drinking water. It's more or less 30,000 big irrigation schemes, agriculture downstreams, and it's mining. It's also a mining lower, not only up the Cerro Verde mining company. All those are very preoccupied because climate change, okay, we give more or less all the problems of water, we give the guilt to climate change, not the water distribution difficulties and the inequity about access to water and water rights, okay. But all those downstreams are preoccupied. Well, our reservoirs, our big reservoirs, they're sedimenting. And when there is no water sufficiently, how can we go on producing energy downstreams or irrigate a very strong agribusiness exportation agriculture? So they are starting to lift up the head and to look upwards and to start to recognize that people, poor people, in 4,000, 4,500 meters above sea level, that they got a role in the landscape and that they are active even in the landscape. There are areas with wetland, they call it alpaca production for wool. It's not so economically interesting, but they are looking now and they are recognizing the importance of people to deal with. And that's our goal with observatories. Thank you.